All right, so we're going to continue working on this chair detail from our textbook to create this furniture arrangement. And this tape is going to be to show how to create the model of the chair. Alrighty, so in the last video, I created the 2D geometry from the textbook information, which is found in module 5. And so if we take a look at that information, we basically created the two-dimensional elements for the chair here. This is the top view of it, and then we have the front view of the chair. And so we have our width and length dimensions here, and then we have our height dimensions over here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just take the armrests on the side and pull those up 27 inches. And then I'll press pull the furniture cushion a height of 8 inches. And the reason I got 8 inches was I had to do the math of 9 plus 8 to get 17 down here. And so as we start to work with this, what I like to do is I like to have a separate copy for the 3D. And so we'll copy the information. We really don't need the dimensions. I probably should turn that layer off, but I'll turn it off as I get modeled. Drop that off, hit escape, turn off the dimension layer. It'll give me a warning telling me that the current layer is off. It's like being in a room, a dark room with a pencil. You can't see what you're drawing. So what we'll do is we'll create a layer for 3D here. And I'm just going to go and work off of my furniture layer. And I'm going to say new layer. And we'll say 3D chair. I like to change the color slightly. So I'll use a bit of a bluish color. Say okay. I'll make this current. And I'll collapse the information for the layering. And we're going to model this one here. This other area here is for our 2D. And so we can go here and we'll change our perspective to a southeast isometric. And then we'll just start the modeling work. When I work with the models, what I'll do is I'll switch over the workspace to a 3D workspace. When you switch workspaces, the menu bar disappears. And so I can turn it back on. And I also lost some of my properties and other things. And so I can re-enable those. You can create what's called a profile that would do that. And when I say do, what I mean is that it would keep your screen the same and you just restore those settings. So if you right click and you go to options, once you have this everything set up, you can export it and then import it. And so then you can get your graphics screen to look exactly the same every time. But with that, we're going to continue modeling this chair. We're going to go and use press pull. We should be on our 3D layer. And so we'll go to press pull. I'm in wireframe. If I change it to conceptual, it's a little easier to make the recording, but conceptual can give you some difficulty because the graphic cards need to be decent. But it's good enough. We'll model that at a height of 27 inches. This one here as well, 27 inches. Bring the back of the chair to that height as well. You could just grab that O-snap there and it'll work the same as long as they're in the same area. Shift middle mouse wheel. And what I'll do is I'll just spin around to the front view or to a view that I can access this information. I'll hit escape and then I'll extrude this one or I'll press pull it. Let's press pull it. It's quicker. And then we'll bring that to a height of 8 inches and then we'll move it with the 3D move. And so that's the chair cushion. And then if we use a 3D move command, we can then click on that sofa cushion, hit enter, and then we need to grab the Z axis. And so if you can't quite get it like I can't there, then you need to change your perspective, shift middle mouse wheel. And what I'll do is I'll grab the Z axis and then I'll move that up. And so I'm moving that up 9 inches from the bottom of the chair to the top of the cushion, and then I'll hit escape. Alrighty. And so if we take a look at the main splash page on here, in module 5, it's going to go to the so you can add color in some elements if you put the cushions on different layers and things like that. You can sort of change those things around a little bit. You could use some solid editing as well. And so we can go back to our CAD system. And then if we wanted to, we can make a layer for the cushion. And so if I come back here to my layers, and I go to my layer properties, AutoCAD is all about layers. It does a lot of layer work, and we'll just make a new layer off of that. And I'll say 3D cushions, chair cushions. And if you like, you can change that color. We'll go with something just off of that one a little bit. Not sure there we go. Okay, make that current. Collapse our layer. And then if I were to select that solid, and you can see with quick properties that it's a solid, 3D solid, I can then go through and put it onto a different layer. And so I can just say, I might be able to just change the color right here. Yeah, I can just do that. That's quicker. If I want to put it onto the layer, then I would go here to this layer, and then I can choose a different layer for that as well. And so I should have a chair cushion layer. And escape. And apparently I didn't like it. So we'll do it with the properties. If you want to add color elements, let's do it with quick properties. Certainly temperamental. And you can enhance your drawing. All right. And so the model of the chair is created with just shapes, basic shapes. And then what we can do is we can just move it off of the model. When we move it, though, what we'll find is that it will separate. And so we want to union those parts or glue them together. And so what we'll do is we'll use a Boolean process for solid editing called union, which will glue them together. So we'll say union, and we'll glue the sides to the back. And then we'll hit enter. And so that's our chair geometry. It looks a little different once I've unioned it. I'm going to undo some of that. And I'm just going to I'm going to leave it like that for right now. I'm just going to move it because I like that visual style. And we'll move that from here to there. And then we'll start to put that on title block. And so we can go to a floor plan template, double click in the viewport, view, zoom, zoom all, 3D view, southeast isometric, and we can choose a northeast isometric or a different perspective if we want to. I might want to switch that around. I like southeast. Let's see what southwest looks like. That's better. Look at the main page. Yeah. Right. So as we continue to work with the model, what we want to do is we want to keep the elements from the 2D separate from the 3D in model space. And what we'll do is we'll create a viewport for the top view, front view, and then an isometric view. We can go back to model space and just move these a little farther apart. So I'm just going to move them. And when I move them apart, all I'm doing is just giving myself some separate room, because if I go back and I turn on the dimension layer, we go back to the floor plan, we can then have a floor plan layer of, or a viewport with the information in top view. And so we can go and change that 3D view to a top view. And then we can bring that information, set a scale, and let's try 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, too small. And then we just bring it up from there. And so we'll go to 1/2 inch. And I like to use more of the paper. And so I just continue to bring that up to a scale that looks reasonable on the paper. And then I'll click outside of the viewport and I'll redefine its shape. That's a little bit too big, so I'm going to dial that down one more time. That looks great. Again, I can redefine by clicking into paper space, what they call floating. Well, they just call it paper space. This, if I double click inside here, is called floating model space or M space. And then I'll click outside here and then I'll create another layer on the viewport layer, or I'll create a viewport. And so I'll go to my viewport and I'll say view, viewport, one viewport, and then I'll just create a viewport. And I'm going to turn these viewport layers off after this exercise. I'm going to try to keep it even by tracking that. Double click in the viewport. If you can't get the double click, you can Control R. 3D view, southeast isometric. And I think I had that at southwest. And if we change the visual style, what we'll find is that that will give us a little bit of, depending on your graphics card, sometimes I'll have to toggle this back and forth. But that's good. That's what we wanted. If you want, you can always add some extra elements to it, maybe soften up the features like we did on the sofa with solid fillets or chamfers to kind of make it look nice and rounded. I kind of like the square look to this one. And then I'm going to lock in the viewport here. For the perspective, we're not going to worry about scale, but for the 2-dimensional, we want the scale locked in. Be sure to fill out the title block information, save that information, and we'll continue modeling this furniture in the next video. That ends this recording.